Back in the day, before streaming, before CDs, we listened to music on albums. A vinyl disc spinning 33 and a third revolutions per minute brought us great music one side at a time. 20 or so minutes of music, 4 or 5 songs usually, that created a single listening experience. This format exposed us to other songs of the artist, not just the hits, and often flowed in an order that was created to build and maintain or mold a musical experience for the listener.
Sideshow brings musical experiences from the past to life today. Here, we discuss and review individual sides of record albums we have grown to appreciate and hope you will too. Welcome to The Sideshow.
Well, welcome to The Sideshow. Today, Mike is going to launch us into a side. What do you have for us today, Mike?
Today, I am going to talk about side one of Santana 3, which was released in 1971. It was Santana's third album. And Santana had not been around for a real long time at that point. The Carlos Santana, the lead guitarist and leader of the band, was originally from the Tijuana region of Mexico. He ended up in the United States and was playing guitar in various capacities. In 1968 in San Francisco, sort of the core band that became, what was originally the classic Santana lineup, got together, and they were playing in the San Francisco area. They, for a period of time, were managed by Bill Graham, the concert promoter from the San Francisco, who also was involved in the Jefferson Airplane, Grateful Dead, the Fillmore Auditorium, both in San Francisco
Part
and
of
in
the scene.
New York City. Part of the scene. And Bill Graham had been recruited to help put on the Woodstock Festival in 1969 in New York. Woodstock, that most people are very familiar with. And one of the things that he told the main organizers, if he was going to come in and help, was that this band that he liked, Santana, play at Woodstock. And Woodstock, Santana did end up performing at Woodstock. They had like a 45-minute slot in the afternoon on Saturday. The rain hadn't interfered with anything at that point. The size of the crowd was probably at its peak, and they put on a set that was very well received. The Woodstock movie that came out, after the Woodstock Festival, features Santana performing "Soul Sacrifice," which was an instrumental track on their first album, which was released. It was not released until 2 weeks after their performance. So when they actually took the stage at Woodstock, their first album hadn't even come out. So they were relatively unknown outside of the San Francisco area where they were performed locally. The performance of their performance in general, and particularly the Soul Sacrifice that found its way into the Woodstock movie, really caught the attention of people. And when their first album came out 2 weeks later, it was successful, and I believe made it to number 4 on the Billboard album charts at the time. And that was again in August of 1969. Their second album, which is called Abraxas, came out in 1970, and that had Black Magic Woman and Oye Como Va, which were both of those songs are fairly well played on the radio. And Santana was very, very popular at that time. Abraxas was a number 1 album on the Billboard album charts. And they continued to ride that success, and then in 1971 released Santana 3,
Mm-hmm.
and it also went to number one on the Billboard album charts at that time. So Santana 3 was when Santana had really kind of achieved his initial peak of
Mm-hmm.
popularity and sort of critical acceptance and popular acceptance of his music. And they didn't have a number three or number one album again until like the 1990s, when that
Mm-hmm.
one with Rob Thomas
Yep.
came
Yep.
out. There was a big hit. Smooth, I believe, is the name of the
Smooth.
song.
Yep.
But so in any case, at the time in 1971, Santana 3 was a big album. It is. I've got the album here. The front cover is very distinctive.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
guy with the stripes on his body holding his hand out is sort of the primary feature.
Mm-hmm.
The illustration continues on the back, and it's
Mm-hmm.
got kind of a conquistador on a Pegasus. A lot of sort of astral, outer
Mm-hmm.
space imagery, very psychedelic, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's any real dispute that the music went well with chemical abuse. And
Well, it really is kind of interesting, those first three albums from Santana. And although you talked about kind of fortuitous timing and just a lot of factors around the Woodstock performance that really propelled them into success from the factor of people enjoying what they were hearing, and then commercial success with their albums. And you do feel a certain similarity in the music on all three of those albums. He currently was on a direction of music at that time, and as his career went on from there, there was a couple different shifts in direction that he took. Some of which were kind of not overly commercially successful, and others which were. But he continued to stay in the consciousness of music for decades after that. But I think you can certainly look back at those first three albums, culminating with this Santana 3, where that initial Santana success, the type of stuff that got him into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it was happening right at that time, and really, really happening for him at that time.
well, there is a certain kind of sameness to the feel of those first three albums. The Carlos Santana's guitar sound being the primary
Yep.
one. The band, in addition to its drummer, just a conventional, drum kit drummer,
Mm-hmm.
they had two other percussionists, playing congas and then other forms of percussion,
The timbales.
and that sure, and
Yeah.
cowbell or whatever.
Yeah.
They were a lot of percussion, very Latin
Mm-hmm.
feel to the music. And in the Woodstock performance, there's a drum solo, and there's also you get a sense of what the other percussionists contribute to the sound of the music. It had that sort of also that kind of John Lord style of organ, that
Mm-hmm.
sort of drippy, sort of late '60s organ sound, and played by Greg Raleigh,
Mm-hmm.
a musician that went on to other things. One of the differences in Santana 3, there was an additional member added to the band who had not played on the first two albums, a guitarist named Neil Schon.
Mm-hmm.
And he and Greg Raleigh, the keyboard player, ended up later in the band Journey.
Yeah. Yes.
And both of those two were members of Journey when Journey had its initial, popularity in
with like
late
Infinity.
'70s, early '80s. Yeah,
Infinity
yeah.
and those
Evolution.
those early and Evolution. Yes, two huge albums
Yeah.
for them.
And so, but in any case, so there was an additional guitar player on Santana 3, and you can tell on the first track of Santana 3, which is an instrumental track called Batuka. And I have no clue what that means or if there is any significance or meaning to that, but that's the title, Batuka, Batuka.
Hmm.
And the song starts out with just some congas playing, and then like some cowbell kind of comes in,
Hmm.
and a rhythm is starting, and then the bass comes in, and and suddenly there's sort of these two guitars that come in that are kind of dueling with each other, and I can't speak authoritatively on which side of the stereo spectrum the guitars, which guitarist it is, but at the beginning of the song, at least, it sure seems like Santana is on the left side of the channel and Neil
Hmm.
Schon is on the right. But they're two different guitars that are kind of playing off of each other. And it's got an edge to it. It's got, it's relatively heavy guitar music, but it's also got kind of a light, but certainly not unpsychedelic
Hmm.
feel to it. And eventually the drums kick in, and these two guitars are kind of going at each other with these fairly intense leads. And and as you're getting to the middle of the song, it sort of tips you off to the fact that this song, and as will be the case the rest of the side of the album, is really kind of a guitar extravaganza.
Hmm.
I mean, you've listened to this music, Mark. I mean,
Yes.
what do you think about
Well,
the just the way the opening track comes in instrumentally?
well, first of all, I mean, I would agree that first of all, when you think about Santana, it's very hard to see any type of list of great guitar players without having Santana on that list. An amazing guitar player. There was a reason he made such an impression at a very young age, as literally an unknown at Woodstock, and his ability to play the guitar was a huge part of that. One of the things with Santana music you talked about, there's a very, very strong Latin sense to the music, and where that shows itself the most is in the drumming. That there's a constant, these drums you talked about. There's not only your standard drum kit, but they've got the congas and the timbales and other percussion that is constantly there. And for me, that was not, and this song is a great example. When I look at like my standard listening, especially early on, of the types of music that I would listen to, this kind of Latin, really driven music just was outside of what I heard a lot. And initially, especially years ago, listening to this music, it was hard to really get into it and sink your way into it and be able to enjoy it. And one of the things that got me around that and really interested in Santana specifically was just taking a little bit of time to watch them perform this music. They were amazing, especially back in this time live. And there's actually we'll put a link in the comments for this video, but there's a very good full concert video on YouTube. It's called Santana Full Concert 8/18/1970 in Tanglewood, and then in parentheses official. It's a full concert that was done as they were preparing and recording Santana 3. They open with Batuka, is the song that they open with. And if you could picture the stage, Santana is not out front. The thing that is out front are the drummers. The timbales and the congas are out front. Santana is actually standing behind them. And so, he's playing the guitar. Greg Rowley is on one side, and Neil Schon on the other, and then the drum kit kind of behind them. And to be able to watch this song start out, and you can see the drummers doing their drumming, that's when you start to get a sense of, you can get past that and start to really feel the guitar. So I understand exactly what you're talking to. I have to admit, especially, years ago when I'd hear this album, I got very distracted by the drums and getting kind of hung up in some of the kind of the Latin drive that was going on in the song. But when you can actually watch it, and then you start to get a sense of how important Santana is to the performance that's happening, and it does. Then you start to focus on how really amazing the guitar sound that's going on happens when you can visualize everything that's happening on the stage. So I would absolutely agree with you, and I'd say for anybody that is struggling to really get in and sink into Santana, because it's just a little bit outside the type of classic rock or album oriented rock that that we grew up with and a lot of people grew up with. Check out a couple videos of them in concert, and then go back and put these albums on, and it really brings that point home.
Well, and the LP, I mean, and well, Tanglewood that you mentioned, I believe was a venue in New York, like New York State, somewhere up the Hudson River
Mm-hmm.
from New York City,
Mm-hmm.
and it was something that Bill Graham was involved in putting on. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
remembering correctly, he had some involvement in sort of promoting some of the shows that
Mm-hmm.
occurred at this place called Tanglewood.
Yeah.
And there's some other concerts that took place there that there's video available of on YouTube from around that same time, around 1970,
Mm-hmm.
1971. And so that would have been kind of a hip venue where up and coming bands would appear, that Bill Graham was putting on. And the sort of the interplay between the percussion and the other instruments, especially the guitar in Santana's music. I originally listened to this album, back when I first got it. It was vinyl, and that was all that I
Mm-hmm.
had. But I've
Yeah.
since, I purchased just a conventional CD of the album, and it's not one of the newer kind of remastered versions. It's just a conventional CD that I probably got for a budget price
Mm-hmm.
whenever I got it. But I happen to have the luxury of having a surround sound set up for audio uh, here at the house. And if you play just a conventional CD through it, it still puts the sound through, all of the speakers of the surround
Yeah.
sound system. And with the subwoofer and whatnot, just playing the conventional CD through that kind of equipment, uh, I don't know whether it's like a Pro Logic 2 type Pro, or I don't know what it is,
Mm-hmm.
but my receiver puts it out through the speakers, and even with just the conventional CD, you can, you hear the congas and then the
Mm-hmm.
cowbell and then the bass, and you can kind of keep a sense of the separation between the different instruments
Mm-hmm.
and their position in the stereo mix. And it's just the way that the album was recorded lends itself to the not true surround sound or 5.1 mix,
Yeah.
but it's a well recorded album in my opinion. But
And I'd agree,
to
and
go,
that's part of the benefit of having truly a lot of musicians. You don't have to like tinker with a bunch of effects to try to move sounds around, say, a 5.1 sound system. There's a lot of music in there to start with. Just in a standard stereo background, you're talking about a lot of instruments playing a lot of music. There's a lot inside of there to listen to. Also great to just listen to with headphones when you can really just kind of explore the music and focus on all the different things that are going on inside the music.
sure, and it's been a long time since I listened to music on headphones like this.
Mm-hmm.
I usually am either with sort of like an iPhone earbuds, or just listening to just listening to the normal speakers.
Mm-hmm.
But I would imagine that real headphones would probably provide a similar effect as I was describing before. But in any event, to get back to the first track on the side, Batuka,
Mm-hmm.
the midway through the instrumental, after Santana and Neil Schon have been sort of finished up their guitar duel, as I've labeled it. a repeating guitar figure kind of comes in. And I don't know which guitarist is playing it, but eventually Santana starts in on just a wailing lead.
Hmm.
And the song is kind of building in intensity. And then, as it really starts to get to the breaking point, it sort of drifts into an organ. This organ comes in to close it out. And it's just that sort of drenchy, Hammond B3 organ sound that comes in. I believe Hammond B3, but this organ sound comes in, uh, and then it just kind of drops off, and you hear this sort of shimmery, some sort of bells, or some, not bells,
Hmm.
but some kind of quiet percussion. And the next thing you know, the very beginning of "No One to Depend On"
Yeah.
comes in, and it's just a cool transition. It's, you're sort of kind of like, you're like the Maxell guy in the old,
Hmm.
cassette ad where he's sitting in the
Yeah.
chair and the music is kind of just coming at him, and the music just kind of backs off, it calms down, and it just sort of settles into the slower, quieter beginning of "No One to Depend On."
Hmm.
And no, that was a song that was played on the radio. It's probably one that, people who are into, album oriented rock radio have
Hmm.
probably heard at some point.
Hmm.
Not a very lyrically complex song. I mean, it basically
Yeah.
just
It.
repeats.
I don't want to read the guy's mind, but I'm gonna say he didn't have anyone he could depend on, based on the lyrics of that song.
And eventually they're going back and forth between "Nobody I Can Depend On" and then "No Tengo a Nadie," the
Yeah.
Spanish, and that's really all it is lyrically.
Yeah.
And once the song proper starts to get going, it's that, congas and other percussion along with the drums, and there's nothing particularly flashy about the song, just the regular verses of the song, which are lyrically simple.
Yeah.
Um, but it just has that Santana sound that you were describing
Yes.
earlier. That Latin
Well.
feel, kind of percussion, dependent on the percussion, but with very distinctive guitar feel to it.
Yeah. Well, very similar to the song "Evil Ways." It just in different. It's not the same song,
Yeah.
But when you take a look at just the feel of it and how it's very similar to that song. If you're hearing it for the first time, and most people have heard the song "Evil Ways" from, it strikes a similar chord. But yeah, very very. I kind of picture that
Well,
kind of that
and
classic Santana feel.
and there is a guitar break in "No One to Depend On" that is just incredibly. I mean, it's a very psychedelic, acid head type sound, and it's one of those where, in the middle of the guitar break, depending on where your head is at, I mean, it's the sort of thing where you forget what song is this,
Hmm.
kind of thing, and like I say, I can't separate, which guitar is
Hmm.
Santana and which guitar is Neil Schon, but I mean, just very, kind of follows through with the guitar extravaganza
Yeah.
feel of the album, but differently. That just the structure of the song is different than the
Yeah.
instrumental opening track. And so while it has that kind of Santana sameness on the one hand, it's got its own unique feel to it within the song. Even though, like I say, while you're listening to the guitar, like, what song is this?
Yeah.
You've forgotten what the song is.
Yeah.
And then, with the benefit of some drumming and percussion, they transition back into the song, and you immediately, after the guitar break is over,
Hmm.
right where you're at. And the song, kind of the simpleness of the song continues. And then I think your comparison with "Evil Ways," which was like one of the hit or the radio singles off of the first album, it really does have that kind of feel to it. I mean, I think that's a
Yeah.
good comparison, but different. Not
Oh
the
yeah,
not the
and I
same, but
don't mean
different.
in like they just reprocessed the song. I mean it's just a feel. I mean you too. Their songs all have a very similar feel. They're different songs, but there's just a similar feel and sound to the guitar and whatever. That's more what I'm saying. It's got it just has that same kind of feel. Very a different song, very different song, especially when you start to get into these guitar performances and that type of thing. Just kind of the same family. I see him as.
And but the there isn't the same kind of transition. But, there's a break in the songs after at the end of No One to Depend On, and which takes us to track 3,
Mm-hmm.
which is called Taboo, and it is a quieter song. It starts out with a fairly in your face guitar and some organ, but then it settles into this nice Latin rhythm with that sort of a kind of aquatic underwater guitar sound, and a much quieter vocal. And it's not clear to what extent there's some taboo of the woman that the singer. And it sounds like Greg Raleigh is the vocalist on that
Mm-hmm.
song. But he's I'm laying, not sleeping. I'm wondering what to do. Time passes so slowly without you, and so he's obviously yearning for a woman, and it looks like a woman that he either doesn't understand or that he doesn't necessarily trust, or I'm not sure what it is, but he takes note of the fact that she never cried as I watched her
Mm-hmm.
leave. So it's a woman. He's more into her than she is into him. Which is
you ever you
some
ever you ever felt that?
I most male persons who listen to this song will be able to relate to that.
Yes, yes.
But but it's another one. It's a conventional song, but it has the Santana feel, and then it includes another just very intense guitar break. Not as intense
Mm-hmm.
as No One to Depend On or Batuka, but
Well, it's
or
the
track number
song.
4 that we're getting to,
The
but
song
it's a good
the
one.
song itself is kind of a quieter song once it gets going. One of the things about the beginning of this song is it's got that feel almost like it's the end of a song. They're playing these notes and they're almost trying to drag them out. Like you'll see bands that are performing live and at the end they're like holding the notes a little bit longer and so it's like dun dun dun. They seem to kind
Yeah.
of hold and drag. It reminded me the song Radar Love starts like that. It starts with this kind of dun dun, dun and then it kind of starts with this quiet dun dun dun. Just kind of and this song does the same thing, obviously different style and different feel, but I kind of sense that when the song started. It's these strong, kind of powerful notes that are coming out, but they feel like they're being held just a little bit longer than you're kind of comfortable feeling with and waiting for. And that kind of it almost like it builds a little tension and then kind of relaxes you as it moves into this kind of an easier start to this song than any of the other songs on the album. So just kind of an interesting way to get you going into the song. Interesting.
And it kind of ends the same way,
Mm-hmm.
except there's kind of a quiet for I don't know 20 seconds or something like that, 20-30 seconds, where there's just this quiet conga percussion, just so the song doesn't end on a boom.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of fades out quietly, which is I think a good way of doing it, given the fact that the song itself was a relatively quiet song,
Mm-hmm.
in the context of the other songs on this side, and it just has a different feel than all 3 of the other tracks on the
Mm-hmm.
side, and but wasn't it wasn't it was still very representative of the Santana sound and the way that and the Santana instrumentation, and just the Santana feel. And it's I don't want to sound politically incorrect, but I mean there's Santana always was able to convey a Latin feel. I mean the guitarists Mexican heritage is not lost
No.
in the feel and sound of their music. Well, like the use of the Spanish in "No One to Depend On." It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But in any case, the after the taboo sort of fades out with this conga ending, quiet conga ending, comes the fourth and final track on the album, which is it's primarily instrumental. There is some vocals that are kind of in the background, and it's all in Spanish. It's not in English, and the title of the song is Toussaint Louverture, who was a person. It was a Haitian general in the Haitian Revolution, which was, and I don't know what year it occurred, but it was a successful insurrection, and where the slaves in Haiti sort of self-liberated themselves against French colonial rule in what is now the nation of Haiti. And it was the only known slave uprising in human history that led to a new nation where the slaves were the citizens. So that is the significance of the title. It was a person. The lyrics don't really suggest anything like that. They're basically in the background. They're all in Spanish, and translated, they keep repeating three different phrases. One is "the leather ones call me," which I believe refers to the drum heads on whether the conga drums or some other kind of percussion. And the second phrase is just the timpani, which follows from the leather ones. And then the third phrase that's repeated is "Let's go brunette to dance my montuno." And what a montuno is, if you get on the internet, is a syncopated piano pattern that is a key part of Cuban music, and it's often used in salsa bands and is a common feature of Cuban dance music. Kind of like a Gloria Estefan type thing. But in any event, aside from the presence of those phrases being repeated in Spanish, it is basically a guitar instrumental. And I will go out, not necessarily on a limb, but I will go so far as to say that track 4 on side 1 of Santana 3, Toussaint Louverture, is one of the single best slices of just pure Santana guitar music that you're ever going to find. I mean, it's right up there. It holds its own with Soul Sacrifice, which is kind of the quintessential Santana instrumental jam from the early days. And I think it's just as good. Both of those tracks on the studio LP are around 6 minutes in length. And it maintains that Latin feel, and it goes into the first, and it's primarily lead guitar. Then you get a little break where there's percussion and the chanting almost of these phrases that I spoke about. Before there's like a transition that goes into the second part of the song. And I mean, how do you think I've laid it out so far as
I
what this song's all about?
No, I would agree. And again, this is, and I know we are just the nature of this show. We push very hard to listen to the music on albums. This is another example, though. This song also appeared on that concert video, and again, seeing this song be performed, you could see how they felt they were given the opportunity to showcase the talent, and Carlos playing the guitar was a big part of that performance. Even the positioning of the song, which rolled out of the end of this song and immediately without break into the song "Evil Ways," which was a big hit for them, indicates they found this song as an important song. So yeah, I would absolutely agree. This is a showcase of Santana guitar, and a great way to end the side.
Well, and there was Santana released a live album I believe it was 1977 called Moonflower. It was actually some of the album was live, some of the album was newer studio material. But they do a number of their big songs, including Black Magic Woman, Soul Sacrifice, and also this one, which is kind of combined with Savor, which was an instrumental track off of the first album. And but in any case, the second part of the song, after this sort of chanting, percussion break, the music stops and Santana does this lead that has a very sort of Spanish feel to it, and then just sort of launches into this faster solo that basically takes it to the end of the song. And after and it goes for a few more minutes. I mean, it's not just kind of a quick solo. And nowadays, if I'm sitting and listening to it, you get halfway between this break in the middle towards the end of the song. It's kind of like, well, what is this all about? And when you listen not just to the guitar but to the music, it's people dancing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that one of the things that music was looking for in the late '60s and early '70s was to make people dance, and I think, but in a way that's different than like early Beatles, like Twist and Shout, big dance song. Or like disco music, which came out started in the mid '70s. I mean, one could argue that all rock and roll or rock music is supposed to make people dance.
Yes.
But this is more like the Woodstock type dancing than the Studio 54 type dancing.
Well, yeah, there's dancing because you are using this as part of the mating ritual, where you're trying to find someone to dance with, and there's a lot of music, including rock music, that kind of focuses on that on that notion. And then you've got the idea of a bunch of people standing there, potentially all guys or all girls, whatever. It's not about pairing up. It's about listening to this music, and then just it makes you want to dance. And you look out in the crowd at Woodstock, for example, and many other concerts. I'm sure you've the Grateful Dead shows, whatever. We've got a bunch of people. Nobody's dancing with anybody except the music. And that's a different kind of dancing. And I think that's the type of dancing that was, really pushed forward by this type of music. You heard the music and it just made you want to dance.
And that's a good way of kind of distinguishing, or clarifying the sort of dancing I'm talking about. I managed to go to 29 different Grateful Dead concerts during the 1980s and very early 90s. And I guess one thing that I can say is that people certainly compare Grateful Dead concerts, the way Grateful Dead concerts were prior to the mid 80s, as being not unlike little mini Woodstocks. Um, and if you watch the Woodstock movie, the part of the movie that seems to get at the feel of what happens at a Grateful Dead concert more than any other. The Grateful Dead played at Woodstock there, but they do not appear in the Woodstock film. I guess their performance was apparently pretty lousy. But in any event, the band that is in the Woodstock movie, that during that segment, that just the whole feel of a Grateful Dead concert is the best portrayed, is the Santana portion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part during the Woodstock movie where they're in the middle of Soul Sacrifice, and there's this woman that they show in the crowd, not petite, but kind of sexy too. And she's got this striped sweater, one of the shoulders, like she's got a bare shoulder out there,
Mm-hmm.
and she's dancing and swinging her hips. And it is just in perfect sync with the percussion. And she's like, turning her head and her hair is flying around. And it very much captures the feel of going to a Grateful Dead concert and just checking out what's happening around you, because people are dancing, and they're not disco dancing like they're trying to, it's not like Love Is the Drug type dancing. They're dancing with the music. They're not dancing with everybody else that's there, not just with their date or whoever. And the, if you wonder, like, what's the point if you're listening to the end of track 4, Toussaint L'Ouverture, and you're wondering what's the point of all this? Well, I think that back in the day when this was put out, there was still that kind of dancing going on, because the sort of the wave of Woodstock had crested, but it was still smoothing out, and this album was kind of at the very tail end of that sort of wave of enthusiasm for just getting out and getting into the music, in your own way, and whatnot. And the whole thing on Santana 3 side 1 was accompanied with great guitar.
Yep.
Most of it by Carlos Santana, but also with some very respectable support from Neil Schon.
Sure.
Though he wasn't quite as intense by the time he found his way into Journey.
Exactly.
In any event, that is Santana 3 side 1.
Sounds like a good side if you want to get up and dance to put on the turntable and give it a spin. So, well, thanks, Mike, for that. Good conversation, good side, and we will check you out the next time.
Sounds good, Mark.